Hi, welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. In this podcast, we dive into conventional leadership in today's fast-paced business environment. With our experience and insights, we'll help you lead with heart while securing your career. Join us for engaging conversations and practical advice to elevate your leadership skills and make a real difference. I'm your host, Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader, alongside Chris Otterking, a Fortune 100 IT leader. Today, we're discussing the first actions you must do after a layoff. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing good, Roberto, and this will certainly be a hot topic. I hope our conversation can help people. I hope you're doing well. How are things down there in Mexico?
Um, Actually, the Mexico City is pretty rainy right these days, so it's okay. Thank you very much. And indeed, besides being a hot topic, it's a current topic because I don't know if you've seen your LinkedIn feed. Mine, it goes with many people being laid off, as well as companies say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we have to lay these 100 people, these 20 people." So it's a current topic.
Yeah, it's very hot, and I know depending on the industry, some industries are getting hit more than others. But if you work at a firm where there are a lot of fixed costs, there's machinery, there's buildings, and the CEO wants to cut costs by 10%. Well, you can't cut 10% of the corner of the building off. You can't usually reduce 10% of your land or 10% of your trucks easily. So unfortunately, reductions in budgets typically hit people pretty hard in most companies.
Yeah, especially also in startups, which are tech, and usually goes with reducing the engineering team, maybe 50% or something like that, and maybe some people who are working certain departments that are not as important as the core ones. So it's a pretty topic. And for, for all the people who are being laid off, I think one of the biggest factors, or excuse me, one of the biggest actions they must do is to become a humiliator for themselves, because usually they do it for the company, but in this case for themselves. And what I'm explaining here is that people has to be really aware of their situation. Where are they now? How much money they have? What are their expectations towards to finding a job? Because they could be either young, 20, 30s, and they could maybe find a job fast, but people who are maybe about 40, 50 years old might not. So I think they had to be these humiliators for themselves, because actually I think some people don't do that. Don't you
Yeah,
think?
no, I agree. You really have to look inside and reflect. What is my personal situation? Be more concerned about the personal situation. I mean, if you got laid off with a group of, so what frequently happens, and in my case was well over 100 people in a batch and multiple batches of these hundreds of people, right? So you do care about others, and as a humane leader, you might be concerned about some of your peers who are laid off at the same time you were, but now is the time to be a humane leader for yourself and reflect. What are you going to get? And an important step in that, and this will depend very much on the kind of company and how the layoff is done. Frequently, our layoffs, you might be told, and you might be working for another week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks even, and your last day in the office with access to things at the office might be 4 weeks from now. So what you might do immediately is really going to be very dependent on whether they come and tell you, "Hey, Roberto, you're laid off. Take this box and put all your stuff in it, and you're out the door right now with HR," and they literally like walk you out the door. Or if, on the other hand, maybe they give you some time still in the office, which gives you a little time to tell your coworkers, maybe get some clarity around the benefits that you might receive. Because one of the things is you're assessing your self situation, right? And you mentioned the monetary aspect of it, right? Hey, your pay is going to be ending. Most people, in my experience, don't look through their HR benefits. They might look into medical insurance. Maybe sometimes they'll look if they're in the USA, their 401k plan and how that works. But almost nobody gets around to reading way down, many, many pages down is what's my severance in case I get laid off? So you definitely want to be asking about that right away, because that might tell you, hey, I'm going to get, again, very dependent on the type of company, but maybe because you've been there X number of years, you might get 6 months of severance. So now you know you're going to continue to collect your paycheck for 6 months. Is medical included with that? In some countries, it is. In other countries, it's only covered till the end of the month, and then you have to pay for the portion the company was paying for you. So your medical insurance cost goes up significantly. That budget aspect that you mentioned might not stay the same. Some big changes might come if you start paying for your own medical insurance, because in the US, very, very expensive. So I think the number one step for me would always be, as you're reflecting inward and being a humane leader, but fully understand the benefits the company is going to continue to pay if you're getting laid off, whether that's none. Hey, legally, we don't have to do anything. So you're being walked out the door right now, and maybe your country or your state has unemployment insurance, but you're not getting any severance. That's like the worst case scenario. Or in other cases, it might be, hey, you know what? We're going to keep you till the end of the month. Today's the first of the month. We're going to keep you to the end of the month. And you may have the option to apply for other jobs. Like you mentioned, maybe we're reducing one portion of the company, but maybe there's an option then for you to apply to other areas of the company. So you want to understand your benefits and your situation in detail as quickly as possible. And I mean within hours. Not like, well, I'm going to take 4 or 5 days and figure out what's going on. It's like, no, your number one priority now is to understand that situation financially and what benefits you have.
Yeah, and let me tell you that here in Mexico, when you get laid off, they don't tell you in advance how many days you're going to be laid off, neither what's going to be your last day. That day, you're going to get fired. They got you into the office and, hey, Roberto, today's your last day of job, but not your last day. Right now,
this minute.
Here is the compensation package you're receiving. Give me your computer, sign this, sign that. They transfer all the money, and bye-bye. So, and we should discuss that in a further episode, because it's kind of a different mindset. It's a cultural mindset. But I totally agree with you. You have to think now, not tomorrow, not in 2 days, not in 5 days, because right now you must understand where you are seated, where you are standing. What are the challenges in front of you, and how you're going to tackle them? Because let me say something. After you're being laid off, after you're being fired or removed from the company, the thing is you must act wise, and I mean money wise. Because one thing is, you mentioned, your insurance is going to go way above to the skies. It's going to be an increase of that, and you're stopping about receiving money. So there is a saying in Mexico that translated has to be, you have to be like slim cows. There are fat cows in which you receive this kind of money, you can spend here, here, and here. But being slim cows, mentioning you have to slim your budget to say these expenses are not the ones that, these expenses are the ones that I have to stick with them. Maybe try to reduce them as much as possible. And these ones, I don't have to be spending anymore. because until you find a job in which you receive a salary, you should be doing that. And for that, let me give you a quick example. I think it was back in 2017. I was an independent consultant, and some customer of mine, I had a meeting with him at a Starbucks. So I arrived at a Starbucks and find out a friend. Hey, dude, what are you doing here? No, I got a layoff 4 months ago, and I came here. I'm checking, the job offers and everything. And I thought to myself, why this guy is at a Starbucks? Because the coffee, it is expensive. It is not a cheap nor an expensive. Why
Yep.
is this guy here? And as I was waiting for my customer to arrive, he was talking, and he said that his wife was working and she was creating all the money, earning all the money for him or her to live. And I say to myself, this guy is a cynic because he's taking his coffee rather than taking his coffee at his home, which is more, it is less expensive, and he to be working rather than maybe drinking and doing something else, finding a job. So that kind of that person was committing a mistake, an error, and you had to be really wise about your situation and not and try to avoid those committing those errors. Don't you
Well,
agree?
and think about this too, is that as you were observing him, right, and you're thinking in the back of your head, man, this guy's kind of, I'm going to read into it a bit, right? He's kind of being lazy about his
Oh
job
yeah,
search, right? Well, maybe other people have now come into the Starbucks and they sort of know him from other jobs, and they're thinking the same thing. What are the odds they're going to recommend him for a job if he's got kind of a lazy attitude? Now, sometimes networking at Starbucks is helpful, right? If a lot of people, that was where a lot of independent contractors got together and you could find out about job leads, maybe Starbucks could help you find the job. But boy, to me, I'd be very concerned about people who might be willing to help me find a job. They're putting their reputation on the line. If I recommend Roberto, I don't want to be thinking in the back of my mind, why is he sipping coffee in a Starbucks at 11 o'clock in the morning when he ought to be home sending out resumes and making phone calls in
yeah,
private to find another job? So, that number one priority, like you're saying, is to get on the job and approach it professionally, to approach it in a lackadaisical kind of lazy way. You might be giving off the wrong signals to people who could help you find a job, and they might be reluctant to recommend you. And
yeah,
that's very bad, because networking is how a lot of people, and most of the people that I know that have been laid off in the past, very rarely get their jobs cold calling, just like a blind ad and they send in a resume and they get it. It does happen, but it's rare. Much more frequently, because I'm thinking of people that have moved up through the hierarchy of the company, more senior people, because that's mostly who I knew and worked with because I'm older. It was through a connection. You knew somebody who worked at this other company and you reached out to them and said, hey, is there any opportunities there? They say, yeah, there is. There's a role that's good. I know the leader of that department. And maybe they can't influence it much, but at least they get your resume to the top of the pile so that at least it's looked at, so that you get the opportunity ahead of 500 other resumes, so that you might at least get the interview. You still have to have the skills, the ability, and win over the panel that's interviewing you. But at least if you have an inside contact that can at least get you through some of that mechanical screening that takes place, it really makes a difference in finding your next role.
yeah, indeed. And in Starbucks, you're not going to find that with your networking. Also, one thing that is a mistake for people above 40, 45 is that they're not updated with new knowledge. Let me tell you this. Recently, I spoke with a guy. He was like 28 years old, and his letter or his reading, excuse me, of people above 45 years old, was that they weren't neither agile nor dynamic nor updated in new knowledge. So if you are being if you have been laid off and you're above these years, this bracket of years, this range of years, I think what you must do is to try, not try, learn new knowledge. If you're an IT guy, okay, what's the trend is no knowledge? Is it cybersecurity? Is it a new programming language? Is it something? But you must be really up to the challenge because companies are going to, yes, use your experience, but they're going to see if there's a fit of your knowledge with this within this company. That's why, well, in my case, I'm learning a new programming language because what I it is new for me, but it has been around. But because you must be up to the challenge of these dynamic workplaces that are different from the other from the old ones.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So any certifications that you get on your, if you're doing your resume, right, your CV, they call it in other countries, right, your
Yeah.
resume, what is the most recent certification that you've gotten? What is the most recent training? What was your most recent thing that you can put a date on? Because I'll tell you, you don't want to put, wow, yeah, I'm really proud I got my master's degree. It was back in 1987. That's probably not a good thing to put on your resume. If you got your master's degree, let's say you went to school after you'd been working for a while, and that master's degree, and I'm going to make up a date, let's say is 2010. All right, that's probably okay. That's 10, 12, 13 years ago. You're okay. But if it's 20 years ago, I'm probably not going to put a date on that. I'm still going to say I have my master's degree. But if it's 20 years ago, I'm not going to say when it was. Instead, I might say, well, I got ITIL certified 2 years ago. I got, certification X a certain time, or, something that is showing that continuous learning is good. It's just if you're doing that as a highlight on your resume, don't date some of the oldest stuff and drop some of the things that don't matter. I'm not sure I would even put my bachelor's degree on anymore for the age that I am. That was decades and decades ago. So I don't know that I would put that on my resume.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice. People won't tell you, the recruiters won't say, when was that you studied the MBA? No, it wouldn't. What they want to know is how actually your knowledge it is today. It is a match with today's businesses because I did my MBA 20 years ago, and the online businesses back then was totally different from today's. So you must be pretty related to what the businesses are actually right now.
Right. Well, for example, you're doing the chat GPT prompt engineering learning, right? And
Yeah.
so I would absolutely be highlighting that on my resume if I was looking, because that is so topical and so current. I would probably not say I'm learning COBOL, for those of you who know what that is.
Yes.
Google it. You
Yes.
can ask ChatGPT what COBOL is, and
Yes. COBOL.
yes.
Yes, actually, and let me tell you, I created a Substack newsletter, which is Practical ChatGPT Solutions, in which I created this ChatGPT prompt methodology. Oh, excuse me, yes. And I put on some real cases over there. So I'm trying to be um, aware of what ChatGPT is, and to challenge myself about finding the right solution. So yes, that would be the case.
Yeah. The other thing that I can think of that I've sometimes have seen people do as a mistake initially when they're laid off is they don't admit it to anybody. And the people that are going to help you find the job, kind of referring back to when I mentioned sometimes a referral gets you to the top of the resume pile. If you don't let everybody that you were laid off, I think that can be a mistake. Now, I don't mean you got to broadcast it. I don't mean get a T-shirt that says it, but you never know who might be able to refer you to a job. You're at a summer cookout with friends, but you don't know everybody at the party. So if you meet a new stranger, don't they typically with guys, right? They're going to ask you, Roberto, what do you do for a living? Well, I work in IT, but I'm currently laid off. I'm looking for something new. Oh, really? I work for Boeing aircraft, and we're trying to integrate AI into what we're doing, and we don't know much about prompt engineering. All of a sudden, there's this person you never knew. You didn't know you were going to run into them, but if you had held back and not told them you were laid off, they wouldn't maybe have asked, the details around what you really do. So while in the past, years and years and years ago, getting laid off used to have a stigma. Nowadays, it happens to everybody. Every single family member that I know, cousins, etc., every single one of us at some point in our career has been laid off now. In my dad's generation, he didn't know anybody who had ever been laid off.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes,
everybody's been laid off at least once that I know.
yes, because that baby boomer generation worked in, it was coined as stability. All the words you used to be 20 or 25 or 30 years in a single work, in a single company. So right now, this is different. Uh, Business are the same, but have modified to something that is more dynamic. If you don't reach the numbers, you get fired. You know pretty well at Honeywell, not by you, but Honeywell did that, as well as Walmart, as well as Facebook. There is no stability as it used to be before. But in order to 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 challenge that, to overcome that, you must be dynamic in your knowledge. People are everything is changing so rapidly. It's like this week that Apple released the announcement of the AR device that is going to change something else. If you think about having your PDA, your compact PDA like it was 20 years ago, is totally different. Right now, that's why you have your iPhone. That's why you have all these kind of services and what's going to be in the future. So you have to be disruptive of yourself in order to achieve, in order to get a job or to have a constant income. That is, I think that is the main difference between the people who say, "Oh man, I was laid off," from the ones that say, "I had to be disruptive in order to be aligned to all these changing times."
Yep, absolutely. And just recognize it's the new normal. It is
Yeah.
very normal to get laid off. So prepare for it. Even if you don't think your company is going to be having layoffs, be prepared for it so that immediately when it happens, yeah, it's shocking. Don't get angry at HR. Don't get angry at your boss. Look, it's just the way the world operates. Know what your benefits are. Know what your economic budget situation is and start looking for a job immediately. Leverage all your contacts. Start that resume, getting it out there, your CV, refresh it, have it ready to go, and start networking because it's gonna, if you haven't been laid off today, you're probably gonna get laid off at some point in your career.
Yeah, let me tell you about this. I met this lady who works at financial at Uber, okay? and she has to work on a yearly basis. Other people who are not going to reach a 5 year period working at Uber. Why? Because they're going to get fired because Uber, or she said, my boss, and there's instructions way above, says that people has to be laid off maximum 5 years of work. Why? Because they are so expensive, and we have to hire new people, more dynamic, with less salary. So it's
It's their
also,
strategy. It's their
yeah,
company strategy. Yes, and it GE, for example, General Electric, they were very famous for their top grade. It was called top grading, and there's a book out on it that they wrote all about how their management was to continually turn over the workforce for that kind of thing. Unfortunately, GE has also, there's many also books written about the failure of that because it created so much infighting, people afraid they're going to lose their job all the time, that they would sabotage others to make themselves look successful. And ultimately, quite a few people recognize that that kind of ruthless management strategy can be effective in the short run and produce profits, but in the long run, it damaged GE and put it to where it is today, which is, it's a shadow of what it used to be, because this top grading actually created a culture not of collaboration, but of actually backstabbing and fighting. And we could have, I think one of the times we did talk about what kind of company culture you want to work with. I think if you started a company and you find out things are happening like that, where we just want to churn and burn people so we don't have to pay them too much once they've got experience, we don't care about them, get rid of them. That kind of top grading, I don't know that I would want to work at a company like that. If I knew that was the culture, I don't know that I would apply there.
yeah. Actually, GE was not having a humane leadership, neither Uber. I wouldn't want to work there also. But
Yeah, exactly.
okay, so I think with this topic, it's not going to end here, but for time purpose, we must close it. Uh,
Absolutely.
we will we're going to talk about this more at a later time. So let's do the wrap up, Chris. Okay, thanks for joining us on another episode of How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. We hope our insights help you become a smarter and more strategic leader. Apply today's lesson to see the positive impact on your team and career. Catch all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and YouTube. Join us next week as we discuss something trendy in the leadership world. Until then, stay humane and stay successful. Bye bye, Chris.
See you later, Roberto.
Bye.